If you've watched every single one of my videos, well, you only have yourself to blame for what I've devolved into since starting YouTube back in 2020 as a supple young innocent boy. Also, you know that Japanese tournament results for Pitch Black specifically should be taken with a grain of knackly. Yes, they give us a general idea of what's going to be good, but every tier list from Pokébook is based on gym battles, and this tweet from one of those gym battles explains why that's bad. Yeah, not only did Lurantis EX win, which is a fluke unless everyone's playing Grimmsnarl, it also featured just 6 participants. Still, one thing has become clear: Gary's Raticate after you obliterated it on the SSN. Because it became a ghost? Also, Hide and Sneak and Mega Excadrill are great, penetrating the top 10 best decks list. Naturally, that's where this video starts. After far too much testing, which could have been avoided if I just looked at the latest tier list a little closer, I'm proclaiming Mega Excadrill EX as the best new Pitch Black deck. What's funny is that there's nothing too special about the card. 90 damage and a mill of 2 for 2 metal is fine, KOing weak things like Dreepy and Dracloak and Badoo. Maximum drilling, only dealing 200 damage for 3 metal sucks though, meaning you're coming up short on most important basic EXs. This is one of the reasons why you'll see Kieran pop up in various lists, adding an extra 30 damage. But if you put 5 metal on Excadrill, which is done thanks to you running 4 copies of Metal Maker Metang, it suddenly has the power to one-shot Dragapult, dealing 330 damage. And in today's day and age, if a Mega can't do that, it's got a shorter shelf life than Fidget Spinners, despite Game Freak giving every trainer in Galar one. And by running Metang, you also gain access to Metagross, who can deal 300 damage. Play Kieran, that's up to 330, offering up another Dragapult beater offer, giving up 1 prize instead of 3. The grass resistance on Metagross also means a Gladion Dipplin has to 2-shot it, so that matchup isn't horrible. Unfortunately, Excadrill is 2-shot by a Dipplin if they use Gladion with Brave Bangle and a full bench. Even with resistance, 180 plus 180 is still 350, taking the KO. And Dragapult players can just run Blaziken to deal with Excadrill, making Metagross extremely important if you want any chance of winning the prize race. How you play Mega Excadrill is how you play every metal deck these days. Run 4 Petrel plus 4 Transceiver, pray to Arceus that Precious Trolley is in the deck, then win. Provided your opening hand isn't utter garbage, I found the ideal board position after a Trolley is 3 Beldum, 2 Drilbur, and 1 Genesect. You then use Genesect's ability, likely grabbing 2 Metang. Or if you're worried about Genesect getting KO'd, 1 each of Metang and Excadrill. Then turn 2, Genesect grabs whatever other metal evolutions you need. The lists have evolved a little bit since you last saw them. Gone is Full Metal Lab, in is Gravity Mountain to bring Dragapult and Blaziken to less than 300 hit points. And 1 Jumbo Ice Cream effectively gives 1 Excadrill 420 hit points. Aside from all that, there's no surprises here. There's 4 Transceiver plus 2 Pokégear to get the best start possible, because if you don't, You could always swap out Special Red Card for Judge since it's a dead card early, but as long as you have some way of affecting their hand, you're good. Recently, a second version of Excadrill has gained more popularity, and that's the one with Secret Box as the ace spec instead of Precious Trolley. This way you can run Poffin to find your Drilbur and Beldum. Then end your turn with Drilbur's Call for Family, which benches any 2 basics including Genesect and Fezandipiti. It's less explosive and does require Drilbur to be your active at the end of turn 1, but when it works, you won't miss Trolley whatsoever. The reason why the Secret Box version is only in 10 to 20% of winning Excadrill lists is that Trolley is 1 card, whereas for Poffin is 4 cards. As long as you don't prize Trolley, it's by far the best thing you can do turn 1. By using it to find all your basics rather than relying on Poffin plus a potential retreat plus an energy to use Drilbur, which means 1 less Genesect ability, there's room for a few extra cards. But whichever way you decide to play Excadrill, it has a great matchup against a lot of the top decks out there. Just make sure you have Kieran for the mirror match as well as Brave Bangle so Metagross can participate and not just sit in Banette's cut share and watch them get it on. I know it was slightly controversial to put Excadrill in first, bumping Hide and Sneak to second, but it's not just the Japanese tier list influencing this decision. I've been playing with myself a lot more than usual lately, and the results have been massively disappointing. There's 2 reasons why Dhelmise seems so strong early. First, it can one-shot Dragapult. You do need Lillie's Clefairy in play, which they can one-shot in return, but it's a risk you have to take. Second, it's super fast, dealing 170 damage up to 7 times per duel thanks to Legacy Energy. But as the Flash movie no one saw proved, speed isn't everything. Plus, the rise of Festival Lead is horrible for Dhelmise. Gladion's final battle is plus 80 against everybody, not just EXs. So they can still take 2 KOs every turn, meaning Dhelmise having a ridiculously high 140 hit points for a random basic doesn't mean as much. Still, in a tournament environment, Hide and Sneak will do exceedingly well. Because again, it one-shots Dragapult and can swing for 177 times in a row, all for 1 energy. So if they stumble for a single turn, you probably win. As a quick reminder, the Hide and Sneak ability protects against effective attacks and abilities. So Dragapult 6 Spins from Phantom Dive can't hit a Sneaker, Alakazam hates Life, Dusknoir can't blow its load all over them, Monkey Dory can't move damage to them, and Frostlass can't place a damage counter on them between turns. Despite that goodness, you're not really supposed to put Hide and Sneakers on the field. Sure, Banette's great early, dealing 80 damage and finding any card in deck. But aside from 1 Banette attack per game, it's mostly useless. And while Sinistcha can be useful, spreading 4 damage counters to all of your opponent's Pokemon, putting anything with 210 HP in Dhelmise range, you almost have to play Patrat. Otherwise, you're basically giving them free spankings of their monkey. Because while the Sneakers are immune to receiving damage counters from Monkey Dory, your opponent can still move damage counters off of their own Pokemon. No, the main attacker here is Dhelmise. Have at least 4 Sneakers in the discard pile and swinging for that 170 damage. Meowth's the only thing getting knocked out before weakness, which is fine when a third of the decks you face are Dragapult. Have Clefairy down, take 2 prizes. So long as you can outpace them, which did happen often in my testing, it doesn't really matter if they boss KO Clefairy once or twice right after. In order to activate Dhelmise's Vengeful Anchor, putting 4 Hide and Sneakers in the discard pile, you use a combination of Prism Tower and Ultra Ball and the new Gwyn. Brilliant Blender is always an option, but Legacy Energy turns a 6-prize game into a 7-prize one, potentially giving you an extra turn to beat them off. I've also noticed recently Japanese players opting for Explorer's Guidance in their lists, because they've clearly come to the same realization I have, which is that fingers are just the toes of the hands. Also, this deck can struggle like a Pokemon that played with its PP too much. Despite that, we've established Dhelmise is awesome against Dragapult, and if you use a single Sinistcha, decks that run Fezandipiti and Latias and Ogerpon are also screwed. From here, it's all about finding the perfect list. Looking at the results of that Indonesia tournament, well, there isn't one. Yeah, nobody could really decide on the perfect 60. You can lower the counts of Sneakers and run to Dunsparce for card draw, only really ever attacking with Dhelmise. Or add Prism Energy to power up Moltres, who one-shots Tealmasked Ogerpon. Or go with a copy of Bloodmoon Ursaluna for the end of a game, dealing 240 damage potentially for free. Personally, I'm more partial to the Spiritomb build. Go for a maximum 16 Sneakers, run 1 Spiritomb, and if you can get 13 of them in the discard pile, Spiritual End quadruples the number of damage counters on 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. In this version, Brilliant Blender kinda becomes a necessity, and if you get lucky and find it on turn 1, that's an immediate Dhelmise. Thanks to a late-game Spiritomb, you can Dhelmise twice to 2 different Megas early, then end their Spirit, taking all 6 prizes at once. Or Matcha Spin twice, leaving them with 8 damage counters. Multiply that by 4, anything with 320 or less hit points is KO'd. Okay, for that Spiritomb list, there's of course a maximum of 4 of each Sneaker. Dhelmise is lowered to 3 copies since an early Banette attack is a good thing, and Sinistcha becomes something you might want to attack with twice. You still need 1 copy of Clefairy to make the Dragapult matchup smoother than my feet, with Gwyn and Explorer's Guidance and Brilliant Blender and Ultra Ball and Prism Tower how you ditch your Sneakers. There's a lot of minute changes you could make, such as adding Lucky Helmet and cutting down on the number of supporters, but the core strategy of setting up a late-game Spiritomb remains the same. Then there's good old Dhelmise to Dunsparce. Instead of edging people, here you want to fully beat them off just in 2 separate sessions. Since Dhelmise only requires 4 Hide and Sneakers to do 170, the amount of them is reduced drastically. A 2-1 line of Sinistcha means it's mostly reserved for Festival Lead or decks with a lot of 210 hit point Pokemon. Otherwise, hope you face nothing but Dragapult and take one-shots all day long using boss's orders to pick and choose your targets. Higher HP decks that aren't weak to Psychic with some healing are definitely a problem though, so try to avoid those. Oh, and the Fluttermane is mostly there to disrupt Festival Lead, shutting off their active's ability. If you find yourself not facing Festival Lead very much, it can be swapped out for something else. Those are easily the 2 most popular ways to play Hide and Sneak in Japan right now. Depending on how things flesh out over here, add Moltres and a couple Prism Energy for Tealmasked Ogerpon with Explorer's Guidance if the draws aren't in your favor. Aside from that, get ready to make Dragapult players sweat like they just whiffed a turn 1 Lilies into everything. If you were to ask a Canadian what they think of Toucannon, they'd ask why you're putting a toque on a cannon. Okay, listen. I can only make so many Fruit Loops and Toucan Sam jokes. At least I tried something different. Anyway, Toucannon is amazing. The only problem is finding the right list because it pairs with everybody from Alakazam to Dragapult to Arboliva to Mega Frostlass and even Eason's Typhlosion. Basically, anybody good who attacks for 1 or 2 energy has a use for Toucannon. I showed off the Alakazam version in my best old decks with new cards video, so here I'll focus on lists that highlight the bird. The most common way to run Toucannon in Japan has been with a Terra. Turn 1, you use Fan Rotom to find Pick-a-Peck, Hoothoot, and maybe even a Noctowl. Then turn 2, ensuring you have a Tera in play, evolve into Noctowl and grab any 2 trainers from deck. They could be Lilies in Area 0, as that stadium is huge for Toucannon. For any energy, Feather Rondo does 60 base damage plus 20 more for each bench Pokemon. Without Area 0, it's dealing a maximum of 260. With Area 0, that's up to 220, which just so happens to be how many hit points Dragapult has. The question then is which Tera you pair it with. If you go with Cornerstone Masked Ogerpon, that gives you a pretty crappy backup attacker who needs 3 energy. But this allows you to run Lunatone and Solrock for an early 70 damage and some decent draw. Plus, Fighting Gong is the best Tera Finderer outside of Tera Orb. This list goes with Maximum Belt as the ace spec, giving you a way to one-shot Dragapult with 11 total bench Pokemon instead of the full 13. Though Prime Catcher and even Legacy Energy are completely valid options, Lana's Aid kind of has to be here since they're going to bump Area 0 at some point and you need to recover all those basics. And at the very least, this version laughs in the face of every Festival lead player who removed Rillaboom since Cornerstone Mask can't be touched by anybody in there. As for Teal Masked Ogerpon, the same basic principle standard applies. Draw cards, expand your bench with Area 0, and dominate the late game with a single prizer who deals big damage while also drawing a card every turn. If you find yourself struggling against Dragapult though, you could run some Psychic Energy and a Azumarill with the Lily's Clefairy or just Rabsca and hope. This list went with the Dung Beetle. You don't play too many supporters because if everything's going right, you'll have a turn 2 Noctowl getting whatever you need. Obviously it's risky, but I've played decks with 15 draw supporters before and never found any. Now, I try to give you somewhat concise deck lists and tell you definitively that this one is the best. For Toucannon, unlike Marissa Tomei, there is no perfect 60. I could make a full video about all the ways you can play Toucannon, including with Terrapados and Briar or even Dusknoir. But for the final build showcase today, I'll ditch Area 0 and talk about our Boliva EX. Instead of worrying about filling up your bench and losing if you don't, use Dawn and Forest of Vitality to get a turn to our Boliva and soften things up with Oil Salvo. Obviously, Shaymin becomes a problem for this deck, preventing you from hurting bench Dreepy and your Cloak. And of course, Dragapult has a stupid built-in bench barrier. But don't forget that non-Tera EXs are still vulnerable on the bench, and our Boliva two-shots anything with 240 or less hit points. While you do need to do math to win with this list, I'll let that slide for now. And you'll definitely lament the lack of bug catching set when everything goes right, except you're still missing an energy to base them with your Oil Salvo. But all in all, while Toucannon isn't the best card in Pitch Black, it's definitely my favorite, opening up dozens of new deck possibilities. Mega Chandelure has overperformed in my testing, but not necessarily because of the Mega. Instead, Lampent shines brightest here, with the Fire Chandelure able to deal with every grass and metal type, including Mega Excadrill EX. Before I get to all that, each battle with a Mega Chandelure deck is going to play out roughly the same. You want to turn 1 Telepathic to bench 2 Psychic Basics, ensuring there's at least 1 Litwick going into turn 2. Then evolve it into Lampent, who cracks this deck open like a butt. For a single Psychic, it immediately benches up to 3 Lampent from deck. You still run Rare Candy to turn any leftover Litwick into Chandelure, but getting multiple stage 1s into play, skipping the basic underneath, is huge here. In doing so, you're able to successfully run both the Mega and Baby Chandelures. For a single fire, Twilight Masquerade Chandelure does 30 damage times the number of cards in your opponent's feet. Best of all, its ability forces both players to draw a card, making it absolutely amazing backup attacker. Now you don't have to expose the Mega until it's absolutely necessary, since this single prizer can one-shot things like Fezandipiti and Latias when they have just 7 cards in hand. And again, grass and metal types are weak to fire, giving you the advantage in those matchups. While the Lampent and Old Chandelure are amazing here, the Mega doesn't suck. It just won't be truly awesome until Latias EX leaves next year, which is also going to be the same day we lose the Fire Chandelure. For 2 Psychic, Phantom Maze does 130 base damage. For each pip in your opponent's retreat cost though, that's up by 50. And with Chandelure's ability increasing their active's retreat cost by 1, it can get to one-shot range on everybody pretty quickly. Except basics, because stupid Latias gives them free retreat. But against evolutions, well, all you need is a Clefairy down and Dragapult's gone. As you can see from my handy-dandy cheat sheet, it doesn't take much for Sia to one-shot something. Most Pokemon have at least a 1 retreat cost. Add in 1 Mega Chandelure, that's 230 damage. And against somebody like Mega Venusaur, you don't even need the Baby Chandelure since the Toad starts with a 4 retreat cost. So yes, this is a real deck despite its tough matchup against basic heavy decks and things like Slowking and Festival Lead. Chandelure lists have definitely evolved over the last few weeks. Marshadow, who seemed like a perfect fit, is gone. Now, players have opted for a slower, more control-y type strategy. You still attack and win by taking all your prize cards most of the time, but Xerosic has seen a sharp uptick lately. This allows you to force them to get a big hand with Baby Chandelure, then lose a bunch of cards, force them to whip their deck out if the game goes on too long. Some of those Pokemon in the list you might not be familiar with are Elgyem and Comfey. Since the deck runs Psychic Energy, this little green man allows you to move their energy around, hopefully buying you some time. Comfey, meanwhile, forces both players to draw 3 cards. While it can help them, sure, it also boosts Baby Chandelure's damage or Xerosic's annoyance. And Maractus is here as a way to spank their laddie ass. If they put it down to nullify the Mega's ability against basics, you boss it up, then trap it. What you may have noticed with that first list is a lack of explosiveness, which happens when you get to my age. Mega Chandelure takes 2 Psychic, but there weren't any Wonder Patch or Crispin, reinforcing the idea that Baby Chandelure is your true MVP. And perusing other lists I found, attacking with the Mega isn't all that common. Other winners ran multiple Nighttime Mine to slow down Dragapult and Tealmasked Ogerpon, increasing their attack cost by 1. And Handheld Fan with Elgyem can force their energy to be stuck in places they didn't even know they had. If you really want to attack with a naked Mega Chandelure, Neo Upper appears to be the best option. It can be found off of Hilda, which is a very important card here since she can also find a Telepathic and Lampent. Because if you don't find a turn 2 Lampent, games will get 69% harder. Should you choose to accept Neo Upper as your ace spec and you don't want to pair it with Dragapult even though it makes far too much sense, what with the whole requiring a Psychic and Fire energy, this is what that list looks like. It's basically the last one, simply leaning more heavily into both Chandelure. Going second and facing a Spread or Dusknoir deck will suck, but going first and getting a turn 2 Lampent will have you saying see ya to your opponent. Get it? Because Sia sang that Chandelier song? Whatever, you'll laugh tomorrow. To be completely honest with you, I'm the reason why there isn't a Mega Flygon. They created the concept, but my feet were a little too slippery next to the keyboard and they accidentally deleted it. Also, there isn't a 5th best new Pitch Black deck. There's a top 4, then the rest. And if I had to tell you the best of the rest, it'd be Mega Darkrai, I guess. For 3 Darkness, Abyss Eye instantly one-shots your opponent's active, provided they're affected by a special condition. Problem is, we already have a Dark-type Mega with 280 hit points who does exactly that. Except Absol only needs a Darkness and a Colorless, meaning Crispin and Counterdane are options. And while it is slightly different, requiring them to have exactly 6 damage counters to period all over them, that's what Monkey Dory's for. So they essentially made the mascot of Pitch Black an inferior version of a card we got last year. Still, if Mega Darkrai ends up working in real life like how it does in your head, it could do some things. Nothing's really changed since the last few times I've talked about Mega Darkrai. Dark Bell is how you get a status condition on their active, confusing both actives if they aren't dark types. Toxtricity is your energy accelerator, and Toxel is an awesome early base adventure. And that's pretty much all you need to know about the deck. To be fair, there is a little more strategy. Since you play Darkness Energy and also beat yourself off a little, Monkey Door is here to spread damage counters. Plus, there's a new Chi-Yu who deals 110 damage for 1 Darkness if it has at least 20 damage on it, which just so happens to be the exact amount Toxtricity places upon energy acceleration. And while Darkrai is mostly in the list for one-shots, Dustray does deal 220 damage for 2 Darkness if anybody on your bench is damaged. Additionally, Baby Brute Bonnet and Sneasel can take advantage of Smart Monkey Dory spreading to take big KOs, with Petrel and EX a great way to end a game, dealing up to 300 damage. So the deck does have ways around not immediately losing to a Tealmasked Ogerpon deck. But against Festival Lead, well, we don't talk about that. Like whether or not a hot dog is a sandwich, the optimal Mega Darkrai list is up to interpretation. A sane person would limit Darkrai to 1 copy, but then it'd be a Toxtricity Dark Box deck, not a Darkrai one, so my feet are tied. While a previous list I showcased went hard on Petrel for Dark Bell, I think this is better since you don't have to rely on Abyss Eye to win. Getting set up is far more important. You'll also notice a copy of Lycia's Appeal, which is a bosses for basics that also confuses, as well as 2 enhanced hammer since Mist and Rocky Energy blocked 1-hit KO moves. Ultimately, Mega Darkrai doesn't deserve a spot in the best new decks video, but by default it was included. The best thing I can say about Pitch Black is that there's 3 solid decks that will impact the meta come July 16th. And you might even see Dhelmise or Excadrill or Toucannon make a push at Worlds late next month. But I think we all know Festival Lead's going to win the whole thing, confusing scalpers when their bulk Dipplin cards suddenly skyrocket in price.